Hola, bienvenidos. Welcome everyone that is joining us today. We are here with an exciting panel of speakers to talk about Hispanic Heritage Month. What is Hispanic Heritage Month? Why are we celebrating it? And why is it important for us to keep the celebration going beyond this month? So first I want to talk a little bit about who we are. Who is Latinx Voces en Salud? So first, by means of introduction, my name is Paulina Sosa. I'm the founder and directora of Latinx Voices, and it is a pleasure to be co-hosting this with our co-moderator, Alejandra. And so Latinx Voices en Salud, in a nutshell, is a grassroots initiative that aims to empower and mobilize Latinx communities around public health, social issues in Nuestra comunidad, but to do that through our creativity, through our arts, through our culture. And it is for that very reason that we have initiatives such as storytelling, blogging, and Twitter chats to essentially tell your story, to tell Nuestra story of who we are and why we are important, why our voice matters.
Thank you, Paulina. My name is Alejandra Rivera. I am the program manager of Latinx Voces en Salud. I am overwhelmed and overjoyed just to be here with you all and co-hosting with Paulina today. We've brought you all here to talk about Hispanic Heritage Month and our approach in the way that we'd like to share and uplift the stories of our community. Like Paulina mentioned, we are grounded in storytelling, and it's really your stories that we want to highlight and share with the world. And so that is why we've brought our great panel of speakers today who will be sharing their stories, not only personal, but also professional, and how they uplift certain communities within the Hispanic and Latinx community. So what is Hispanic Heritage Month and why are we celebrating it in this way? Paulina will go into a little bit about our 4 pillars. But really, Hispanic Heritage Month is a time for us to celebrate our culture, celebrate our art, celebrate who we are and who we want to be and what our future is for the Latinx community. And so we're really excited here to talk to you all, and I'll pass it back to Paulina to describe our 4 pillars for this month.
Great, thank you, Alejandra. So what are the 4 pillars and why did we come up with these? In light of COVID-19, in light of the number of natural disasters that have hit Puerto Rico, and really in light of this special year that we're in with 2020, it being a major election year and also it being the census year, we have an opportunity to really make sure our voice is heard. And so we have broken up Hispanic Heritage Month into 4 pillars. The first pillar is specifically talking about community health and promotoras. These are the heroes in the midst of COVID-19. And so we are really excited to hear from Venus with Dia de la Mujer Latina to talk about how promotores are really doing outreach in our community to essentially help our community get out of the situations that many of them find themselves in because of COVID and other issues and other disparities. The next pillar is focused on Puerto Rico recovery and resilience. After Hurricane Maria, which we actually hit the 3rd year anniversary of on the 20th, a string of earthquakes, and of course COVID-19, we know that the people of Puerto Rico, through their resilience, have just really come a number of steps forward. However, there is still a number of efforts for us to get involved in to support Nuestra comunidad in Puerto Rico. So we are going to be hearing from Elvis to talk a little bit more about what this looks like. What is the reality in Puerto Rico and what's next? Our 3rd pillar is cultura y arte, embracing nuestra identidad. And as many of us know, with the number of backgrounds that we share from Latin and South America, our culture, our art really plays a big part, a major role in identifying who we are as Latinx. And so we're really excited to hear from Danny and Ernesto to talk a little bit about the power of film in embracing our story and our identity. And last but definitely not least, with 2020 being the year that it is, we have advocacy and engagement and getting counted. What is next beyond Hispanic Heritage Month? What is next for us as we aim to get counted this election, as we aim to get counted this census? There is so much for us to get involved in, and so we want to make sure we share that with you. And Rosalie and Marianne will be doing that with us today. Alejandra, do you want to present our amazing panel of speakers to the group?
Of course. Thank you so much to our speakers for joining us today. We're really excited to hear your thoughts and your inputs and be inspired. For our first pillar, Community Health and Promotores, we are humbled to have Venus Guinez. She's the president and founder of Dia de la Mujer Latina. Next, we will have for Puerto Rico Resilience is Elvis Rosado. He's an expert in Hurricane Maria response efforts and works at the Pennsylvania Health Department. For Pillar 3, Cultura y Arte, we're really excited to have Ernesto Quintero and Daniel Harrell. Ernesto is the director, and they are both producers for A Sacred Journey film, and we'll get a little sneak peek of that during our presentation today. For the fourth pillar, Advocacy and Engagement, we will hear from Rosalie Aguilar, National Project Coordinator at Salud America, and Marianne Carabeo, Account Manager at the U.S. Census Bureau. So welcome, presenters. And without further ado, I want to pass the mic on to Venus Guinez, and she will be talking to us about Dia de la Mujer Latina. Venus?
Muy buenos días. It's a pleasure to be here talking to all of you about my favorite subject is our promotoras and community health workers. So thank you for the opportunity, and let's get right into who are our promotoras and community health workers and what brought us here. So first and foremost, you can go to the next slide. I wanted to share with you that in 1957, my mother was sterilized without consent because all she knew is that she was going to get her tubes tied. And unfortunately, when she found out that it was a permanent procedure 4 years later, when she remarried and was ready to have children, that's when she was only 28 years old. And it was then that she never trusted doctors. And I grew up in that atmosphere of never trusting doctors, only when you needed them in an emergency. And so, fast forward 1992, it was an emergency. It was an accident that brought me to the emergency room. And it was in the emergency room that I found out I had breast cancer. And in 1995, my sister, Vicky, died of cervical cancer. Again, one of those sad issues of our Latinas who don't think they need a pap smear. And so in 1997, God gave me the wisdom to start Dia de la Mujer Latina, an organization that was founded with a lot of love from all of my friends who later became our first promotoras. And we provided breast and cervical cancer screening to many of Atlanta's poor and medically underserved population. So we now have grown into a more national organization. We have taught promotoras on a national basis, but I want to bring you to what's going on in Texas. Texas was the first state to really recognize the role of promotoras and to actually set up legislation to provide for them a formula for them or an avenue for them to become trained and certified, both in Spanish and English. This was in 1999. In 2009, I moved to Houston, Texas with my organization and brought Dia de la Mujer Latina to Houston. And it was very difficult to try to break into this group that was only there to train and certify promotoras. And finally in 2009, I was awarded the opportunity, the first Latino organization awarded the opportunity to train and certify promotores. We have trained over 4,000 promotores, and I have served in the advisory council for Texas. But I wanted to share with you that in Texas, they don't care whether you are documented or not. You go through the training by a training that has been sponsored and approved by the state of Texas, and you will become a certified promotora community health worker. So this is the type of training that we provide for our folks. And just next slide. So we not only train our promotoras, but now we have proven that they have been so good at what they do. They are the trusted members of the community. They're the ones that have helped us bridge the gap and reduce health disparities over the last, 20-something years. And so when COVID hit, In February, I already had developed a training for promotoras and community health workers in Spanish and English on COVID-19. And on February 25th, we were approved by the state of Texas to train the program. And on March 5th, we launched our first webinar on dispelling myths about COVID-19, way ahead of some of the other organizations that you would think would be on top of this. Why did we do that? Because we knew that our promotoras are the key messengers in our community. They understand the system and cultural barriers. They have been through some of those barriers themselves, and they know how to find the right resources. So we have a mantra. It's the MIND program. It's M for motivar, motivate our community to get screened. The I stands for inform our community about the local resources. And means navigate. We have to navigate our community through some of these hurdles, especially with the complicated healthcare system that we have in this country. And E, educar, for educating our community and our families. So with all that was going on with COVID-19, we sat down and thought, okay, we've got to do something with our promotoras. And we developed what we call a telehealth community navigation program. This was also approved by the state of Texas. It is a program that launched our Hablando Entre Nos. This is a way where we want to talk to our people in our community using the mind, body, spirit format. So the body is, how are you? We call them and just want to say, hey, how are you? You've been to one of our health fiestas. We're just wanting to make sure you're okay. Do you know what to do if you get sick? Then we go into the mind part. Where are you getting your information about COVID-19? How can we help you get more information? Do you have any myth or any concern that you would like for us to verify? And then toward the end, we close it with the spirit. Would you like for us to pray for you, or would you like to pray as we close this conversation? And people actually cry because most of them don't know much about COVID-19, but they also don't understand the guidelines. Some of the government agencies were too late in translating the information to our Latino community. So we not only provide that, we provide them with a hotline. And that hotline, anything that they need, they can call us. This hotline is manned by our promotores, and we actually have been able to find people going through severe depression. We've been able to navigate them to the resources that they need. Anxiety, we've learned the anxiety level, especially those that are undocumented, those that cannot get back to their commute to their homeland. These are the ones that were left behind and have not been able to come back to work here. There's a lot of anxiety so there's a lot of other issues besides social distancing and washing hands. And so we have learned to work with our community to reduce some of the stress. We have found many of our community health workers with stigma, suffering from stigma. We still have that issue that is really permeating into our communities. And the two biggest barriers are information and communication. So we have launched a campaign titled Misinformation plus Miscommunication equals Mistrust. That campaign, we want not only for the government to provide the right information and make sure that the messengers are people that are respected members of our community, trusted members of our community, such as our promotores and community health workers, because all that's going to do is lead to more mistrust. And more mistrust is not going to help us solve some of the problems that we're having with integrating and eliminating disparities in clinical trials and accessing not only the testing, but also the vaccine that's coming up. So we need to reduce those disparities, and that's how we're going to do it with our promotoras and community health workers. So I'm really proud that every Saturday we are on Facebook Live and we are saluting our promotoras. We already saluted this past week El Paso, and this week we're saluting the Valley, South Texas, and continue on with San Diego the following week and San Antonio, and we will continue every Saturday saluting our promotores that are doing such wonderful work in our communities, not only reducing health disparities, but they are making a difference in empowering our community to health wellness. So saludos a todos ustedes, and God bless our promotoras and community health workers, and God bless the United States of America and all our Latinx community. Next slide. So here we are. We have launched different programs that are career paths programs. Our promotoras are now learning how to be telehealth community navigators, patient navigators. We have sent some of our brightest bilingual promotoras to become patient navigators in some of our cancer centers, especially MD Anderson. Behavioral health, we have a lot of issues in our communities with surrounding behavioral health. So we have trained and have also brought opportunities, career opportunities for many of our promotoras and community health workers to become behavioral health community navigators. They're in the schools, they're in working with our elderly, with our sick. But one of the things that we are looking forward to is our promotoras and community health workers become clinical trial community navigators, because we need to have more than just 2% of our Latinx community participating in clinical trials. We need to be there for all of us. And so this is, again, God has brought me to this level. This is a time period that I salute our promotoras, even in Puerto Rico and more recently in Mexico. We are continuing, our goal is to train more promotoras, to empower our communities. Y la lucha continúa, pero no seremos vencidos.
Thank you so much, Venus. It's so empowering to hear about the amazing work that's being done with our promotoras here in Texas, but really across the country and in reality across the Americas. So thank you so much for enlightening us and for empowering the promotoras in this country. There is so much to do, and as you said, the fight continues. So thank you again. It is now my pleasure to welcome you to our next speaker with Elvis Rosado, who has just done a tremendous amount of work in the response to Hurricane Maria and as well in his community in Philadelphia. So we're just very honored and very excited to hear Elvis's personal story and experience around Puerto Rico and really our call to action and how we can better engage with the response and recovery of Puerto Rico.
You want to put on the video or?
I am from arroz con gandule, not yellow rice. Venezuela, Mexico, Colombia has it too, and it tastes as good as mine. I come from a green island where everything grows in the trees for free. La Palma, like in Santo Domingo y Cuba, they're like giants, and they delight you, te enamoran with the warmest breeze. I am from Hamacas, pelo kinky o lacio, frizzy or straight hair, mulata, negrito o cano, bronze, dark, and light skin. I am from big families that don't need a reason to get together and go for a swim, pa la playa. I am from a place that's proud of the Taino, African, Spanish roots. I come from a place that we call you negrito or negrita just because we like you. Vengo de un lugar where our strength comes from the Taino Indians, our rhythms de Africa, our courage from Spain. I'm a mofongo and asopao of cultures. Boricua is my name. I am a Latino from El Caribe. I am a Wilda Vega's son. I was born in Humacao where the sun rises, and I was raised in Caguas where the Taino cacique Caguax is from. I am from arroz con gandule. I told you that before. I am from Alcapurria, Morcilla, y Lechon, where everything has sofrito y sazon. I come from a place where we greet each other with a flying kiss. Doesn't matter who you are. And at home, a cafecito is always offered and something papical, where we ask our elders for la bendición when we say hello and goodbye. And a Dios te bendiga, mijo, mija, comes fairly quickly as terms of endearment is the reply. Where I am from, we have the longest Christmas break in the world, and that ain't no lie. We go from Thanksgiving to Christmas to New Year's to Three Kings and 8 days after that. In that time, coquito is offered at every house, and we have lights at the plazas of the towns. Parranda, tembleque, pitorro, yuca con ajo. Christmas goes down. I am from Puerto Rico, where my raíces are from. I have a lot of sweet childhood memories there, like bacalaíto, gallito, canica, y chicharrón. To all my hermanos y hermanas from America Latina, this is Hispanic Heritage Month. Ecuador, Nicaragua, Chile, Honduras, you are celebrated with the bunch. Being from America Latina is what makes us unique. We can go from Panama to El Salvador to Guatemala. Español is what we speak. We add a little spice to this. We make things a little bit interesante. We have a mixture of cultures in us that everywhere we go, we have a representante.
Thank you so much. Yes, it doesn't matter where we come from. Resilience is something that in the Latino community, it has always been there. In September 16th of 2017, Puerto Rico was devastated by a hurricane called Maria. It was the greatest devastation in Puerto Rico in over 100 years. And hundreds of thousands of people left the island, but those who stayed and those who are over here in the mainland came together to make sure that people were taken care of. Where some of our elected officials failed, the communities stepped in and did the work. I want to share a little piece. When Maria hit, I didn't know where my family was for 5 days. There is a resilience among people to survive and to help each other. We ended up, there is a walkie-talkie system in the, on the cell phones that was working even though cell phones were not working. I was able to get a hold of a group in my hometown of Arecibo, and through them, I met a woman out in Lancaster, PA. Her cousin managed to make it to my mom's farm to let me know that they were alive. We were able here to create a program called PA for PR, which collected food. We were able to store food here, pack it here, ship it out through the use of an airplane through one of the ball players from the Twins baseball team. We were able to get food to Puerto Rico where other people, other churches and programs over there would unload it, pack it, and distribute it. When I got there in November, we were able to pack up not only food to feed people, but enough food to feed a family for a week. And in one day, we're able to do 2 shipments or load up 2 vans with enough for 150 families to survive for a week in each trip. It's amazing. One of the groups that went down before I got down there was able to take satellite phones, and they made it as far as my mom's property. And we're able to put my mom on the phone for us to talk so that we could hear her voice and know that she was okay. That is something that for me there is no financial value to that. It's beyond any price you could put on it. To know that somebody on literally thousands of miles away took their time to make sure that my family was okay and that I knew that. But also we, my family's farm has water, so we were able to have people come to the property, not only to get water, but to bathe. And then we had individuals who fish, who would come by the property. And even though everything above ground was pretty much gone, we had plenty of root vegetables that were planted that my stepfather was able to dig up and trade. They would barter fish for root vegetables, and they would get a full meal, and my family would get a full meal. And it is something that, it transcends beyond Puerto Rico, because even here, like I said, hundreds of thousands of people left the island. To Philadelphia, 1,200 families that we know of, that we had contact with, showed up in Philadelphia. The organization PA for PR, Prevention Point Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Prevention Partnership, and the Latino Partnership Institute, which is under the umbrella of the Philadelphia Partnership, came together to make sure that people were taken care of. Prevention Point allowed them to use their address, their mailing address, through the request of the city to make sure that these individuals had somewhere to get mail and be able to get services. Through the partnership, we had one of the groups that the leadership groups put together baskets and was able to take care of families and create and collect donations and financial donations to help these families while they were here. And we even were able to offer people an opportunity to get back home. Some people, unfortunately, because the schools and everything were closed in their towns, were not able to leave. But we found that no matter what, you know, I've always called it Popeye philosophy, where Popeye has always been humble, and he reaches that point where he says, that's all I can stand and I can't stand no more. And he eats his spinach. And for us, I think is we've reached a point where we realize we can't always depend on our elected officials to take care of us. So we come together as families and do what we need to do to take care of each other. Un vecino ayudando otro vecino. One neighbor helping another neighbor. And this is something that has always continued not only in Puerto Rico, but even here in this country amongst Latinos. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, the minute that they know you speak Spanish or that you have Spanish descent, there's this sense of, oh, and it seems more friendly and more family. And, you know, we tend to always take care of each other no matter what. I'm grateful to the fact that total strangers helped me to make sure that my family was okay. And I'm grateful that my family was able to take care of people's families there, at least in the sense of making sure that they had water. But this has literally brought us closer together. There is a sense of more family-oriented love and camaraderie in Puerto Rico now that wasn't there prior, or that was almost lost prior to Maria. So, you know, even though Maria devastated the island and a lot of people were hurt and a lot of lives were lost, a lot of good came from it. The island is flourishing, the people are flourishing, and the relationships have gotten stronger and more powerful. I thank you all. Un besito. And know that we are always here no matter what you need. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Elvis. We've really appreciated you being here today, but also sharing your personal story with us. We are so humbled for you to share with us your story, and here we are so grateful that we get to uplift it and share it with others on this webinar. Shout out to all the beautiful people of Puerto Rico. You all are beautiful and amazing, and we really just want to take this time to thank you to all those people who are helping Puerto Ricanos connect with their families, and thank you for the resources that people are able to come together and help each other. So thank you, Elvis, and we really, really appreciate it. Next, I will be introducing our third pillar, Cultura y Arte. We have two representatives today, Ernesto Quintero and Danny Haro. Danny will be talking to us a little bit about his perspective and introducing a Sacred Journey film. And then we'll get a little sneak peek, and then Ernesto will share his story and the meaning behind the film. So without further ado, please, Danny.
Thank you. I can't help but every time I hear Elvis and Venus talk, I just, it gets me, man. And the stories that, you know, being a storyteller, I cannot imagine and wait. I cannot wait to hear and see the stories that are eventually going to come from these experiences from Puerto Rico and from the individuals who have dedicated their lives to helping. I mean, those stories will come. Hopefully we'll be around to see them, because my biggest regret is that things don't happen fast enough. And within our community, as we've talked about the importance of art and culture and how our stories, there's no shortage of any heroes in any culture. As we've learned from Elvis and Venus, there's just not enough of them presented. And so our goal, myself and Ernesto, is to try to touch on stories and individuals who represent our culture. Tell stories not only factually, but entertain in an entertainment way, educational way, stories that move you, laugh, cry, all the basic emotions you want to feel in telling stories. But I've been in this business since 1982. I can tell you that back then, compared to now, I'd say we have more actors, more producers, more directors, but what we don't have are the individuals that can greenlight our stories. That means people that can say yes to providing money to develop stories and projects. So it's very much a struggle within our in our world to try to have people, our people, that understand our stories. We have the filmmakers, we have the actors, we have the storytellers ready to go. We just don't have the individuals that are ready to say, yes, I like that. Let's do a story about the Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico and the heroism that resulted from that. So those are the kind of things that we struggle for in this business. And, you know, one of the nice things I think about, in a small way, our company, and you'll see it in a moment, this film, A Sacred Journey, we touch on topics throughout our career in this, together as a company. We try to touch, as they say, on topics and stories that reflect our culture and that things that maybe people don't know about. History is something that I think lacks, that we don't know each other. We don't know our cultures. They don't know us. And that causes a lot of misinformation, misunderstanding, a lot of the prejudices and the hatred that we see in today's times. I believe will be eliminated by learning our history and telling it. That's what we strive for in Higher Ground Entertainment, to try to educate not only ourselves, because we can't teach others until we teach ourselves. We can't learn about other people's cultures until we learn about ourselves. So our mission is to try to educate ourselves, educate others, and by that, try to bring people closer together. So what I'd like to do is just now bring in Ernesto Quintero, who is an incredible individual. I'm honored to have him as a brother, as a compañero, as a working partner that's dedicated 15 years of his life and his family's life to tell the story that reflects not only his individual experience in the family, but what reflects in our community. ALS is growing in our community. We don't have the information for it. And so what our goal right now in this particular story is to try to educate us, learn about this disease, and educate others. So I'll turn this over to Ernesto, who now will tell you a little bit about our latest film. And we're blessed to have a little bit of a trailer. We'll get a little tease here on this Zoom webinar. So without further ado, Ernesto Quintero, our director, producer of Sacred Journey.
My parents had 6 kids in 7.5 years. If you think about that, they were busy for a long time. Out of 6 siblings, Juan and I were the closest in age. We did, everything you can imagine is 2 friends doing together. Not just 2 brothers, 2 friends. Juan was a peacemaker. He was always breaking up my fights. But if you saw him in class, he was a clown, an instigator, a troublemaker. He wasn't a saint. And he was like the perfect father. He was like a super dad. And walking into their house was like walking into laughter. So much joy, so much love, so much peace. Sorry, Growing up with my brother was a gift, but our lives would change directions much sooner than we expected. I had an appointment. I went to go see the neurologist. He did a couple of tests. I went back in at the end of October and he diagnosed me with ALS, Lou Gehrig's. And it was October the 26th, 2005. And, it was like dropping a ball on me. And the news affected all of us profoundly, but we didn't have a clue of the intensity of the situation, really.
And for me, it meant having to face up to this 15-year drug addiction and decide whether or not I was going to be able to be there for my brother, for my family.
You plan everything, you know? You plan maybe 15, 20 years ahead. And it just feels like they pull the rug.
It was a matter of how are we going to juggle this? Who's going to take care of who? How do we support both of them at the same time? They're going through different issues. You know, Ernie chooses to live this type of lifestyle. Juan didn't.
When Juan was diagnosed, I was living a life of a full-blown drug addict.
Ni nos imaginábamos que uno de la familia hubiera andado metido en drogas, ¿verdad?
The interesting is that I couldn't ask God to help me get sober, but I could ask Him to help me so I could be there for Juan. That seemed like something that God would grant me.
I think at some point we don't want him to make a bad decision.
Yeah, but I mean,
at some point they're going to have to make a decision. Either you decide that or you can elect to have comfort care where you're made comfortable, but nature, of course.
¿Ya estuvo? ¿Ustedes estarían bien con eso?
Si eso quieren.
Claro, que sea la voluntad de Dios.
Pero tú qué quieres para él, ¿verdad?
Regular medicine just tells you to go home and die. And it's kind of hard to accept that. So, can't give up.
One night it took this massive hit and it just did something to me that was so scary. I was just holding myself because I felt like I was gonna die. God, please help me. Let me get through this because my brother needs me.
Wow, every time I look at this trailer, it really moves me and it chokes me up, and more so now because just about 4 weeks ago we lost our brother Juan to ALS. You know, as much as we fought to look for a cure, ALS finally took him. I mean, all the way to the last minute, my brother fought. He wanted to stick around for his kids. He wanted to try to raise awareness. He wanted to just live, you know. It's pretty amazing how valuable life is, because even in Juan's condition, you know, the last 12 years of his life, he was pretty much bedridden and 98% paralyzed. He lived out of a ventilator and he breathed out of a box. So it just tells you that even in that condition, life is precious. So watching this trailer, you know, I'm seeing him and I'm thinking, this is 15 years, 20 years of me shooting him and his family and my family and covering, just being there, you know, with the camera and showing him that his story matters, like all of our stories matter. And that's the power of film and the power of arte and the power of our cultura. I saw value in my brother's story. It's funny, I was traveling, working with Jennifer Lopez, traveling the world. We went to 40 countries in 4 months. I was a camera operator. And I love the work. It was a job in a sense, but I could not stop thinking of my brother at home, you know, and this little documentary story that I had that was worth, you know, for me, was worth just so much more than working with an A-list Hollywood, you know, artist, which was also fun, but this was my story. And that's how I feel about arte. It's our cultura that we express through this medium. In our case, it's film. You know, I believe that film is the most powerful form of media that you can use. It taps into most all the senses. And when done right, you know, it really affects and taps into your emotions. So every art form is involved. There's music involved, there's dance, there's visual arts, there's spoken words, there's narration, there's voiceovers, all these beautiful things that come together in a film. So I'm really happy that I've chosen this industry to tell our stories, because as a result of that, I get to celebrate my brother for the rest of our lives. Even when I pass on, this story will live forever. And that's the beauty of film. And so my name is Ernesto Quintero, and I'm also honored to be working with Danny Otto, who's my business partner and a veteran to this industry. Danny, you know, used to run Almost Productions, and I'm lucky to have come cross paths with him, because Danny's been one of the ones that have paved the road and opened doors for us, for me to step in and be able to create. You know, I always say that Danny finds the monies and I get to spend them, you know, so we have a really good relationship. Thanks, Danny. And I also want to salute Latinx Voces, because, you know, the reality is that even though we're a majority here in Los Angeles, California, in Hollywood, we are 3% in front of the camera as Latinos and 3% behind the camera. So, I mean, think about that. Only 3%. Danny mentioned that we have artists and actors and filmmakers, but there's not people greenlighting these stories. So in a sense, Paulina and Alejandra here have greenlit this platform for us to come up and tell our stories. You know, Elvis's story and Venus's story and everybody's stories. And, you know, and Venus's cause is really interesting, because us dealing with the hospitals for 15 years with my brother, there was a lot of errors that were made. One time they gave my brother medication that belonged to a different Quintero. Our last name is Quintero, but they gave him this medication that just threw him off, almost overdosed him. You know, and ever since, my mom and all of us were like hawks. Every time they gave my brother something, we had to be careful as to what they were giving him. So what Venus is doing is very important, and rightfully so. You know, you have to question the system, because they want to cut us up and give us drugs. And I really believe that we have to become our own curanderos all over again, you know? But I'm happy to celebrate my Chicano culture during this Latino Heritage Month. But I really believe that our contributions to this country, you know, don't fit in a month. You can't package them all into 1 month. You know, we and the way we celebrate throughout the year is by the stories we pick. Most all our stories are stories, and Danny kind of mentioned this, that uplift, stories that maybe that can inspire, stories of heroes that are role models for our youth that don't have this. Because, you know, as typically, as we've heard this before, and as if you see, we are still seen as drug dealers, drug addicts, gardeners, you know, plumbers, all the derogatory stereotypic roles. That's how we're still seen on television. And we are some of those, but we're not the majority of that. So it is our job with Higher Ground Entertainment to find those stories and then bring them to you. And that's what we've done with the Sacred Journey. And so this film covers the topic of ALS, and there's actively 30,000 people living with ALS. And my brother was given 3 years to live when they gave him his prognosis 15 years ago. And there's no cure yet. Hopefully one day we'll be able to strike out ALS. But the story is about a Mexican family who comes to the rescue of my brother, Juan Quintero. And in it, you get to experience his journey, his trajectory of living with ALS, but you also get to experience, you know, all the blessings and miracles that arose from his story. A Sacred Journey is a story of heroes, basically. One, Juan, who was given 3 years to live, and he lived for 15 years, which I think Danielle used to always say, I think that's a record of an ALS patient. And I don't know, we got to look into that. 2, my mother, who at the age of 68 decided to sell her flower shop and go to nursing school to become a nurse so that she could, you know, take care of my brother and become a caregiver. One of the active 66 million caregivers in this country. And my mom became a primary caregiver. And, you know, 3, the community and family that came together, thousands that came together to raise money and funds to help Juan and to raise ALS awareness, which is something, you know, you see in the film as well. And lastly, I don't consider myself a hero, but as you saw in the trailer, it's one of the blessings that came out. You know, my brother struggled with Lou Gehrig's disease for 15 years, and I'm 15 years sober. So I learned, we talk about arte, you know, and cultura and life. Does life imitate art? Does art imitate life? In this case, you know, my life was affected by my art form. Just because this film gave me something to focus on. Putting the camera on Juan was what I do, but putting the camera on Juan also held me accountable. And being with Juan by his side for all this time with the camera started allowing me to see that, you know, I could sober up, you know. So art is a healing tool, and to me this is the perfect example of how it can save somebody's life. I believe my brother's, you know, prognosis saved my life, and I believe art is what's keeping me alive. So it goes hand in hand. Life, arte, and cultura go hand in hand, and I love the topic. So our plan is to continue raising ALS awareness. That's 1. 2 is to team up with some sort of hospital, healthcare provider, somebody that's interested enough to help us find an ALS or create an ALS MS registry for Latinos, because it still continues to be a black and white world. You know, somebody asked me the other day, what are the numbers of Latinos with ALS? And there's no numbers. We're not counted, you know, but if you ask me about blacks and whites, I could tell you those numbers. It's really interesting. So our job with the film, one of our goals is to try to find how many Latinos are suffering from Lou Gehrig's disease. You know, that's one of the goals. We also want to raise, you know, we want to celebrate, you know, the 66 million caregivers in this country with this film. We want to figure out how we can change policy and somehow honor those caregivers like my mom. My mom was lucky because she had 6 kids and a husband that were helping her. They were trading off. But what about those people that are, you know, one mom at home taking care of her son, and she also needs to work and provide? It's just, it's nearly impossible to do that. So we're going to use this film to try to change, you know, legislation around caregiving. We took the film through the film festival circuit, and we won first place at the Docu International Film Festival, and that led to distribution. So where the film is at now, it's actually on Amazon and other digital platforms. So we got full digital distribution. Look for the film. It's called A Sacred Journey. Google it, or just go to Amazon and watch it. And it's important for you to watch and write a review. It'll help us, you know, keep the film on these platforms. And it's rare, and I'm proud to say this, you know, that, you know, but it's also rare to see these Latino films rise to the top. And I'm proud to say that ours is one of them right now. So support us further, watch the film. And once you watch it, just be aware that it's going to make you want to hold and hug your loved ones tighter, and just enjoy it. And then tell me on the review what you felt right after you watch the film. I'm curious to know. But that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for listening.
Wow, thank you so much, Ernesto, and Danny, for just, you know, sharing this story with us. And it is our privilege to be able to honor Juan's story and Juan's legacy, and to you know, to join this this powerful effort with you. So, on behalf of Latinx Voices, we are particularly excited to share the film with our network and with our followers as well. And so, and I think you touched on something so important, that there are not enough stories out there. And so that's the beauty that Hispanic Heritage Month brings us to it, an opportunity in time in this very important year, to share those stories, to share those local heroes, and to really uplift our voice as a community. So thank you so much for both of your commitment and to both of your both of your effort in not only bringing light to what ALS is and to the realities of it, but also bringing light to caregiving and to the realities around that. And again, it is our privilege to join this fight with you. So muchas gracias. Thank you so much. And with that said, we now transition to the fourth pillar, which I'm sure many of you are asking, well, what's next? How can I help? And, each of our speakers have brought forward different calls to action, but specifically with it being a census and an election year, we specifically want to hear from our two speakers, Rosalie Aguilar and Marianne Garaveo, who will be talking about not only what's next in this atmosphere, but also what's next beyond COVID. I think many of us have our eyes focused on what COVID is and what COVID means for us, but what is next and what can we do? So without further ado, let me pass the floor on to Rosalie. Rosalie.
Hi, good morning. Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me. Thank you for having us. I'm happy to be here today, and thank you to all the speakers. I mean, all your stories are truly inspiring. I'm definitely looking forward to watching A Sacred Journey film. I do have a family member who also passed away from ALS, so I'm very interested in learning more and having the opportunity to watch it with my family and share. So thank you to all the presenters. But today I just wanted to share a little bit about the work that Salud America is doing. So for those of you who are familiar with Salud America, we are a project that is funded through the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We're based in San Antonio, Texas at UT Health within the School of Medicine there. So we operate out of a university and we're led by a team of researchers, primarily Dr. Amelie Ramirez, who's the principal investigator and director of the program. So I myself am the coordinator, and we have a wonderful team that works for Salud to raise awareness of the issues impacting Latino health. Initially, we started out working on Latino childhood obesity prevention. This was several years ago in 2007. We learned that, there just wasn't enough research happening in this area. So Robert Wood Johnson Foundation was gracious enough to fund us to be able to work with 20 different researchers, early career investigators across the US, so that they could work on different solutions, work in their communities. A lot of the research that was happening was done not just in a clinical setting, but in a community setting. And I guess that's important to recognize as well, that the community's voice matters. And so that was the initial start of Salud. Since then, we've grown. We've also expanded our scope of work. So now, beyond just working with researchers, we work with the community, and we work with individuals, everyone from parents to educators and healthcare professionals, or just community leaders. Anybody, can be an active voice in their community. And so we work to raise their voices. We work to inspire them and encourage them to promote Latino health equity. So if we can go on to the next slide. So again, just to kind of reiterate, our mission is to inspire people to get involved in building health equity for Latinos and for all. And so far, we've been able in the last few years to grow our network to over 400,000 individuals. And all of these individuals are people who are interested in creating communities where people can work, play, and live more equitably. Through that work and through the resources that we develop and share, our network members have been able to achieve various policy wins. And for instance, for Latino childhood health, we had a third-party evaluator find that we had over 179 policy wins. And so the work that we're doing does matter. And I think it's important to just kind of recognize and note that, you know, a lot of times we don't realize that we are, you know, participating in an advocacy action. A lot of times we think, okay, advocacy is just, you know, being involved at the state level and the federal level and working to develop laws or policies. And ultimately, of course, those are often the goals, but advocacy can happen at a much more local level as well, within the community, within our schools, and within our places of worship, and so on. And so I think that's something that Salud America tries to communicate to our network. So if we can move to the next slide. So we have a website where all our information is housed, and individuals who are interested in Latino health can come to our website and learn more about the issues that we write about, that we've researched, and we try to focus on issues that are more pressing. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the research that we recently released. We also have several campaigns that we put out periodically. Quite frequently, we're on the lookout for, you know, what's happening also at the federal level. Our various federal agencies asking for input on certain guidelines. Like we've, through our network, been able to provide guidelines on physical activity, comments on that, comments on nutrition, comments on, you know, even water, having a cleaner and healthier environments. And there have been several issues that we've been able to advocate for: access to healthcare, things like this. And so we develop campaigns. But in addition to that, we have a group of wonderful individuals that we refer to as our Salud Heroes. And our Salud Heroes are really such an important part of the work that we do. From the beginning, the heroes is really kind of at the center of a lot of this model. In addition to the research that we do, the stories that these heroes have to share are just so important. That's what really elevates this work and makes it, I guess you could say, kind of more applicable. It makes it, you know, to where we can understand that, you know, advocacy is something anyone can participate in. It's something that we can all be advocates in our community. And so through these stories, we inspire others. And so what we do is we have our team of curators that reach out to individuals doing work in their communities. They write the stories, and then they, in some cases, are able to make small videos about these individuals as well. And so those are the stories that we share through our network. In addition to the campaigns, we also create what we call action packs. And action packs are truly inspired by our heroes. So when we learned that someone has done something incredible for their community, and if we feel like, you know, this could be replicable in other parts of the country, we find a way. Our team gets together, we talk to the heroes, we try to gather all the information that we can on this topic, and we put it into an action pack so that others can have access. And so far, those have been incredibly successful. We've had several schools launch food pantries or install access to water bottle filling stations so that kids could have water to drink throughout the day, clean water. And, you know, we're working on some new action packs right now, but, you know, we're working to address issues of bias in our community. And so we've got, you know, a lot of great ideas. We're continuing to work on those. Another important tool on our website are these health equity report cards, where an individual can go and look up their county and their state, and they can instantly access data that they can take to their leaders and talk to their community with, and, you know, discuss, okay, what are the issues that we're facing here? Are we having higher than normal cancer rates in this community? Are we having a lack of access to transportation options or a lack of access to healthy food options? Is diabetes higher in this community? Are Latino children graduating at the same rate as other children? You know, what are those disparities that we're seeing? So that's kind of the purpose of these reports, to really empower individuals, advocates, and build capacity. Another thing that I don't mention here in this list, but I do want to mention, is our tweet chats. So every Tuesday we host a Salud Tuesday tweet chats. And in fact, we've hosted some with the Latinx Voices and Salud Campaign, and they've been a wonderful co-host with us. And so, so we've touched on various topics, one of them being caregivers as an important topic as well. And so every week we're, giving people an opportunity to advocate, to share their responses, their comments, their ideas, their, any information or resource that they know of. And it's just a great platform that we've found people engage very well with. And so, so that's something we will, we continue to do, and we invite you and encourage you to join those. So if we can move to the next slide. Okay, so now kind of touching a little bit on COVID-19. So as we've, joined several groups, we've been asked, what can we do to reach Latinos? We've been very concerned. As soon as the pandemic started, we started looking at, collecting various news reports, collecting research and information that was being published, and sharing this with our network. In fact, our homepage at the time was completely directing people towards just new updates on COVID-19. And so we continued that for several months, and we continue to write about this topic and interview folks dealing with this topic. But one thing we decided to do was launch a campaign that was more specific and culturally sensitive to Latinos. Since we are communicators, this is something that we felt we could also contribute to. And so our team got together, we discussed the various guidelines that were being shared, various things we were hearing in our communities from our relatives, from our friends, from various folks in our network. And so we created the Juntos We Can Stop COVID-19 campaign. So these materials are available. We encourage you to check it out. We have various fact sheets and infographics and information that you can check out. And I'm happy to say that these are also now available in Spanish. And so please do check it out. You can Google our website, Salud America. You'll find that information there, or you can visit the link that I have there on the bottom, which is salud.to/juntos.covid. So yeah, it really just kind of breaks things down and tries to put it in a context and information that folks can better understand and share with their families. We also have a few testimonies from folks who kind of share their stories. Again, we really do believe that is an important aspect of the work we do. So we can move to the next slide. So real briefly, I won't touch hard on this, but we do have, we cover a lot of information with Salud America. Overall, we're working, again, for healthy communities and families and schools, as well as cohesive cultures. So I want to move on to the next slide, just so we are not running out too much of time. The next slide is just kind of highlighting some information that we just released last week. This is hot off the press research that we have available on, something we've been actually anticipating for over a year. We've been working really hard on this to kind of bring some updates on how is bias impacting our Latino community. Why are people biased towards individuals who are lower income or people of color? That racism that exists, it's problematic, and it is harming our health. It's harming our communities. And so, even at times we don't even realize that those biases exist. Sometimes we think of racism just being this overt thing and explicitly seen, but a lot of times there is implicit bias, or some people like to call it unconscious bias, that we harbor. And this is something that sometimes, even since we're children, a lot of times we've developed these biases. But the issue is we need to confront that. We need to address it, and people need to understand more about how it impacts our policies, how it impacts our communities. And so we've created these resources. We've broken it down into some simple fact sheets, as you can see here. That's one example of a fact sheet, and we talk about some wider issues such as systems justification and moral disengagement, which again, these pertain to why do we allow things like this to continue? Why do we allow inequities to continue and accept that and think it's okay for these unjust things to occur? So there's a whole bunch of research behind that. We highlight it, and we're here to answer questions. We're also we'll be collecting stories from heroes. So we're inviting anyone, if you want to share your story with us, we'd be more than happy to speak with you and have you join us for that. So that's pretty much what Salud is up to these days. We also we're involved in so many different topics, and right now we know the census is coming up, so I think that's a nice segue to our next speaker, who Paulina and Alejandra will introduce. So I do want to encourage everyone to be sure you vote, be sure you participate in the census, because what a lot of people don't realize is that the census determines resources that are allocated to our communities, resources, health resources. And if populations are undercounted, then a lot of times your own local community is not going to be able to provide the resources that we need. And so I'll stop there, but thank you so much for giving us this platform today.
Thank you so much, Rosalie. We really enjoyed hearing about what Salud America is doing these days. I think it's incredible that you also have the shared mission of elevating stories and elevating the experiences of these heroes. So we're really excited to see these products that you're going to be sharing with us on social media. And I really encourage everyone watching to check out the Twitter chats on Tuesdays. We really enjoy collaborating with you on those. So go out and raise your voice on Twitter with Salud America. And as she mentioned, Rosalie, we are transitioning to Marianne from the Census Bureau. So without further ado, Marianne. You might be on mute, Marianne.
Hi. Sorry, I think I was listening through my phone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So just as Rosalie said, it's extremely important.
Oh, I think we lost you again.
Hello?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Sorry, little technical difficulties here. The 2020 census is highly, highly, highly important. As Rosalie said, there's a ton of stuff that are happening that affect not only the U.S. population, but specifically, an impact on our Latinx community. And if we can move over to the next slide. The 2020 census is a complete count of the population and of the housing of the United States every 10 years. It's also for its sovereign. It's also for its excuse me, something popped up. Sorry. It's also representing everyone where they usually reside, which is a place where they live or sleep most of the time. The census counts all people living and staying in an address, not just one person or family that's staying with that specific person for a temporary time. It includes non-relatives, foster children, and children with no other place to live, even if they're living in that address, for a short period of time. Next slide, please. Who is counted? The 2020 census counts every single person living in the United States on April 1st. April 1st is the date that we use as a metrics or as a benchmark to sort of allocate everyone in the United States. And this includes people who are undocumented. It includes temporary workers, international students, and workers on an assignment overseas. For example, our military families who are currently overseas, those get counted as well. We usually count people where they mostly reside, as I said before. I'd love to highlight, of course, that all children under your custody live in your home, including foster children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, and children or friends. It's extremely important to count them. We've seen over the past decades that children from ages 0 to 4 tend to be the largest undercounted population in the nation. And it's a variation of things. We live in a more complex world where, we don't have the traditional family where, one child can live with their grandparents, or one child can live with, you know, mom and dad split throughout the years, or they have, you know, situations where your nieces and nephews live with yourself, but then they're going to be transitioning elsewhere. You know, it's important to count children because at the end of the day, you know, these are resources that are going to count specifically for them for the next 10 years. And if we can please go to the next slide. So Rosalie said that, you know, there was a ton of resources that our community gets based on census data. These are some of the programs that get funding through census data. There's about $675 billion distributed annually through the census data. And again, these are just some of the, you know, ones that are of the highest. But, you know, it's also, think about, you know, census responses informs for your local daycares, your schools, your hospitals, your health clinics, and services with Spanish-speaking personnel that a ton of our community uses. You know, census response also informs decisions by governments and businesses about the new investment possibilities, new services, or new jobs. You know, participating in the 2020 census is not just for you, but it's also for your community to plan a better future. And if we can go to the next slide. This is basically what we ask. As you can see, some of our questions are pretty basic. They're not anything that intrude in your personal household. You know, we just want to know who's there, what ethnicity, the ages, that relationship to that person. You know, if you're renting, or if you're a renter, or if you're an owner. And that one is just to create statistics about home ownerships and renterships in the United States. So it's really basic questions, about 10. Obviously, if you have more members, it would increase just a little bit. But if we can go to the next slide. And this is really something that I cannot stress enough. I mean, we're in September of 2020, and we still get the question asked every day: does the census ask about your citizenship status? You know, the answer is no. We do not ask whether anyone in the United States is a U.S. citizen. We want to count everyone. And more specifically, we cannot give any of our informations or any of the data that we collect to any law enforcement agency, that being FBI, your local sheriffs, your local police department. All of that is completely secure. The census is safe, it's secure, it's easy. You know, as a census worker, we are bound by Title 13 of the U.S. Code, which we are bound to protect your information and keep it strictly confidential. But again, I cannot repeat this enough. We do not ask any of the citizenship question. You know, we just want to know that, hey, there's X amount of Hispanics living in the United States. And if we can go to the next slide, please. Like every agency and every organization, we have moved towards a COVID-19 relief. We have a ton of our census takers or census enumerators going around through different areas of the country, specifically in those areas that have a low self-response rate, knocking on doors. They all have PPE, you know, their masks, their gloves. They're highly easily recognized. Just knocking on doors and trying to get that final push and that final enumeration to get everyone counted. Next slide, please. It's extremely important to, you know, to see or to know what your census takers will look like. You know, we will have a valid ID. They must have a valid ID badge, you know, with their photograph. They have to have the watermark for the U.S. Department of Commerce, which is the parent company of, or the parent agency of the U.S. Census Bureau. You know, we might have bags, we might have our tablets and whatnot, but, you know, if someone knocks on your doors and they have all of these qualifications, they are a legitimate U.S. Census enumerator. And again, they are also bound by that Title 13 code, so they cannot share that information with anyone else. So you should feel secure to give your information to that specific person if they meet the qualifications listed. We can go to the next slide. And this is such an important slide because this is currently what we're seeing. If you see to the right, we have about 11 states, including my home state of Florida, that are currently seeing low self-response rate. We highly encourage a self-response rate for two reasons. One, who better knows your household than yourself? And two, it sort of eliminates having to have that census taker. And if, again, for example, my parents don't speak English, so if we have someone coming to the door and they speak English, you know, they might be more reserved and they'll be like, no, I don't want to speak to you, you know, especially someone from the government. So it's highly important to have self-response. Our self-response, you know, it's safe, again, it's easy, and it's important. We have about 12 languages that cover some 98% of the nation's languages. We have those languages. You can call over the phone, you can do it online, or you can do it, if you haven't done so already, by the paper format. Again, there's about a 65% of the national response. We really want to get that up, specifically in these, you know, 11 states that are sort of falling behind. And if you can see, you know, Arizona, Florida, New Mexico, you know, North and South Carolina have large Hispanic populations. So it's truly, truly, truly important to get that count out. And next slide. And if you have any questions, please feel free, you know, to connect with us. We have all of our social media outlets ready to go. And again, on the next slide, you'll be able to see my email. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marianne and Rosalie, for giving us really an insight into what's next beyond COVID-19, and what's next with the census. So the census, especially with the time deadline really kind of ticking right now. I know a lot of people still have questions, as you mentioned, Marianne. The question still comes up about citizenship. So we will definitely be sharing your materials out these last few days as we approach the final deadline for the census to hopefully bring up again the Latino count for the census. And Rosalie, we will definitely be sharing out the resources on Juntos Stop COVID, along with the other things that you mentioned, especially those about the stories of our local heroes. And so with all of that said, you know, as each speaker has provided a call to action and has provided information that talks and really speaks to the crux of each of the pillars for Hispanic Heritage Month. And something that Danny and Ernesto really pointed out is that the celebration continues beyond Hispanic Heritage Month. What is next for us, our call to action, continues beyond October 15th. So all of the resources that we will be putting at latinxvoces.org will continue to remain relevant. And so if we can go to the next slide. With that, I want to also make a call to action for Latinx Voices. And I want to make a call to action to you, because each of you that are watching has a story of your own. And we are here to uplift your story. We are here because something that Ernesto said is that every story is important and your story is important. And so, you know, who are your heroes? Who are your local heroes? What is your story? And at latinxvoces.org, you'll see that there are two specific links asking for your story. One is in video format, and then one is in just a storytelling format. And then we are also welcoming you to join the listserv. We have Nuestra Voz, our first issue just went out this past week. And we also have our COVID-19 task force, which many of our speakers today are also very much engaged in the task force and what we're doing. So there are a number of ways for your voice to get out, for your voice to be heard. And so with that, we welcome you to the start of what's to come. You matter, your voice matters. And again, we just want to thank you so much for joining us today. Muchas gracias y nos vemos.